There's an amazing technique which is all around getting an experience of what we call air hunger, which is around breathing less, and it's slowing the breathing down, and it's getting to a place where you feel actually quite uncomfortable and need to take a big breath and staying in that space. It starts to train and teach the body that we don't need to be over breathing, we don't need to be taking that much in, and we can actually hold more CO2 in the body, which is the key for better performance.
Hey, I'm Chloe Dalton here with KO Sports on another episode of Everyone's Game. Today we're talking about something I'm really excited about and very passionate about. You've probably heard about breathwork. It's become a bit of a buzzword around places like Bondi with people jumping in the ice baths and practicing their breathing, but what does it actually mean and what is it actually doing? I've got an expert with me here today, Lindsay Chan, the founder of Rhythm of Breath, who teaches and trains breathwork. Lindsay, you've been doing breathwork for a lot longer than people in the Bondi ice baths. Can you tell us a little bit about how you first found it?
I actually stumbled across breathwork, and it's not the traditional pathway I think that a lot of people go into. It was actually after my father had passed a few months earlier, and myself and my family had been through a whole lot of big stuff, and I didn't realize at the time, but my body was completely shut down, in shock, confusion, in high stress response. And just that one session for me really confused me as to how powerful it could be, to the point where I was like, whoa, what is this? How did that work? What's the science behind it? It was very unexpected and put me on a path of like, wow, what is this? My background's psychology, so very much around sort of talk therapy and coaching and, you know, how do we change how we think? And so for me, it was an introduction, I guess, into just how powerful it can be to work with the body and the body wisdom and the intelligence of the body to allow it to do what it needs to actually help us and guide us. Yeah.
It's interesting, there's multiple things that you've touched on there, and I think in my own experience that I've had with anxiety and trauma, I got to this point where I was in such a heightened state of anxiety, and my head was going so fast and getting so far ahead of me that I didn't ever feel like I could be present in my body. And I did a lot of work with a psychologist and learned about the power of the breath in bringing you back into your own body, into the present moment. And that was a really huge learning curve for me to understand that it was almost like bringing control back into my own life, because I think sometimes with anxiety and mental health, it feels like these things are out of your control. And I felt like I was equipped with the skills to be able to manage that through the power of breath, which was quite incredible. And the second element is, for me as an elite athlete, I've unfortunately had a pretty significant back injury. I had back surgery in February of 2021 in the lead up to trying to go to my second Olympics in rugby sevens. And I had the surgery done, had microdiscectomy done, and came back, did all my rehab, and it's generally pretty good, my back, but it does have these flare-ups. And what I've realized in trying to work through my biomechanics as an athlete, that a lot of time when I'm sprinting, I'm trying really hard, so everything's like, ooh, like going as fast as I can, like switching everything on. What I've learned, particularly in the last 12 months, learning more about efficient breathing, is that this is not efficient. This is not the best way to move my body. So I've almost learned the breath work in helping to manage the anxiety, but efficient breathing day to day and helping with sleep and a whole range of things like that. But now I'm at the point of introducing it into my performance as an elite athlete. When I'm sprinting, it's thinking about, okay, I actually need to breathe into my belly and switch my core and everything on in a way that I can actually run efficiently rather than with everything switched on too much. So I'm very excited to, if you can't tell, to pick your brain and learn a bit more about the physiology behind breathwork. Can you take us into that a little bit?
If you think about it this way, breath is the one thing that we can consciously control in any moment. So we can change our breath right now in this second and how we are breathing. So the pace, the rhythm, the quality, whether we're breathing in through our nose, through our mouth. So from a physiology point of view, I think what's really important to note for those who don't know already is at the very foundation, the very basis of our physiology, we want to be getting our functional breathing right. So we have so many different styles of breathwork out there, thousands. It can get really confusing. I really like to just think about it as 3 styles of breathwork. There's your functional breathing, which is how we're breathing 24/7. This is really, up to 23,000 breaths a day on average.
That's a lot of breaths.
It's a lot of breaths.
I had no idea it was that many.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so many of us are breathing in a dysfunctional way. So first of all, we've got this amazing opportunity to just, shift the gap on our optimal health, nervous system regulation and physiology just by getting our regular breathing right. Then we've got the daily techniques, which is, what you're doing, and we can do these sort of anything from a 2-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute breath journey or technique with a specific outcome in mind. So it might be about rest, recovery, injury management, performance. And then we've got the transformational breath work as well, which is the more deeper. But I think going back to functional breathing, what I think everybody needs to know is nasal breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, slowing the breath down, breathing low into the body, and we're actually wanting to breathe less. So many of us are switched on in that sympathetic drive these days, which is the fight flight, it's the foot on the gas pedal, and we want to be really training the body to be more in the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, and having that balance. So before we even get on the pitch or leave the house for the day, we want to be making sure that we are training that functional breathing. Nasal breathing has so many benefits to it, that we want to be really just enhancing and optimizing the chemistry of the body, the physiology of the body through functional breathing, first of all.
And then if we take a look at performance, how can someone who maybe is an elite athlete getting ready to perform, or someone maybe doing something that they're really nervous about, how can they use it in preparation for a big event?
Yeah, great question. So when it comes to performance, the key is really we want to be looking at increasing our carbon dioxide tolerance. So we often think about oxygenating the blood and getting more oxygen in the bloodstream and into the body, but actually the key is just tolerating more of the carbon dioxide, which is the gas that is really key for performance, for endurance, for quality and efficiency of oxygen going into the bloodstream and into the muscles and into the brain. The techniques that we need to be doing for that are things like allowing the body to feel that we are building that CO2 tolerance, building that CO2 in the body, and actually being able to maintain that. So there's an amazing technique which is all around getting an experience of what we call air hunger, which is around breathing less, and it's slowing the breathing down, and it's getting to a place where you feel actually quite uncomfortable and need to take a big breath and staying in that space.
So is that feeling of discomfort from the carbon dioxide rather than the lack of oxygen in that moment?
Yeah. So that's the wanting to take a breath in feeling, and it's almost like you're getting a little urge to breathe from the diaphragm, and you stay in that space anyway. So you're just training the resilience of how long you can stay before you take that big breath of air. And what this can do is really just starts to train and teach the body that we don't need to be over breathing. We don't need to be taking that much in. And we can actually hold more CO2 in the body, which is the key for better performance. And so the more we do this, the less we'll start to feel that air hunger, and the more it'll be easier to breathe less and breathe low and breathe slow. And so you can do that in an exercise where it's just quite regular throughout the day, but you can also do it in your training through nasal breathing when you've got high heart rate, when you're doing your movement, when you're actually doing your training as well, and you're feeling that urge to breathe and open your mouth. So in terms of your training, you can be doing sort of 50% with nose breathing, nasal breathing, and 50% with open mouth breathing, depending on where you're at. And that's the kind of the goal. And that will really help to optimize your performance and shift that barrier of how much you can hold.
I've started to try it, nasal breathing, and it's hard.
Yeah. How does it feel?
Yeah, it's quite different. I think it's because it's something that I've only learnt more recently. It's such a different thing to get my head around implementing it into training, because I think as an athlete you kind of just do the things that you've always done without knowing why you've done them a lot of the time. So it's a funny thing to think about.
Yeah, and it's natural when your heart rate's high and you're training and you're at high, at your peak state. It's really natural to want to breathe through our mouth.
If I give you a scenario, so I'm playing AFLW, I'm playing for the Giants, go the Giants. I take a big mark, I've got to kick the goal that wins the game. What would your advice be around the breath work, or what I can utilize in a moment like that?
Yeah, I love this. So a couple of things. First of all, we would say that a lot of it is in the pre-game. A lot of it is in you priming your body to be in a positive stress response, but staying calm. It's around training the ability to concentrate, which is through breath awareness. And it's through really extending that respiratory chain. So it's sort of the more techniques and the more exercises you do, the more you keep coming back to the breath, the more that your body imprints that ability to be in more of a parasympathetic, calming, controlled space when you're in the real thing and the pressure's on and the crown's going wild and you're like, whoa, this is a lot. Your body will naturally, because you've sort of rewired that subconscious pattern of being stressed but then being able to control, you'll be able to take them slow, calm breaths, be able to come back to that concentration and focus. And from that place, you'll be able to just readjust your nervous system so that you feel calm, you feel balanced. And when the nervous system is calm and balanced, you're able to stay more focused and your mind energy comes back into the body. And so you get clarity in mind, it's better for focus, and then you win the game.
I'm feeling calm and ready to go. I'm ready to keep going. What about the use of breathwork in recovery after exercise and sport?
Yeah, so another great one is the exhale. I mean, there's so many different techniques that we can do. Box breathing to really, lower stress levels. There's the 4-7-8 technique to be able to, again, connect to that parasympathetic. But if we just think about the exhale just being key all the time, any exercise with a long, slow exhale will bring you back into that parasympathetic dominant, which is where rest and relaxation and recovery can happen. The most simplest exercise that I could give you is just to slow everything down, bring your conscious awareness to the breath, and really just counting, for an exhale of 6 on the exhale, and then maybe going and extending it to 8 on that exhale. So it'd be changing all of your breathing to your nose breathing and then slowing the exhale down, really extending that exhale. Just really imagining the exhale going all the way to your pelvis. And then as the heart rate slows down and you connect more to your body, then you can really slow it down and just imagine it going all the way to your feet, for example, really lengthening the exhale. And that will start to slow the system down. So always meet yourself where you're at first. So if you are in a high, powerful state, you've just come out of a big game, heart rate is high and there's lots of energy happening. You want to meet yourself where you're at in terms of how you're breathing, but just start to consciously slow it down. So you may be mouth breathing at that point and just notice that you can maybe start to do an inhale through the nose and a longer, slow exhale through the mouth. That will start to bring your body and your energy down, and all of the biochemistry will start to rest. When that's calmed down, then you can start to change your breathing into your nasal breathing, and then you can start to do long, slow exhales, long, slow inhales. And then when you start to bring that down again, then you can start to go into breathing less, breathing low, breathing slow in the body. And the more you do that, the more you train that, again, that respiratory system will remember that's what we're doing, and that we're used to coming into more of that parasympathetic dominant state more of the time, and your recovery rate will be quicker, and again, it'll become automatic.
There's obviously processing the physical injury, but for a lot of the time, if it's a traumatic injury or if it's a long-term injury, there's a really big mental component where the athlete has to prepare themselves to compete and play again. It's a really big thing for them to have to address, and breathwork can definitely help that, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I think just performance anxiety, stress in general, because you guys it's so in the spotlight and there's a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. And when you get an injury and it's like, oh, that means how long? I'm not quite sure how long the recovery. Am I going to get back up to speed again? It can be really stressful because it's your professional, it's your personal brand. There's a lot going on on the subconscious layers there around worry and anxiety and overwhelm. And I think having both a daily practice, but also being able to clear the body of all those things that we might not consciously know that we're holding, can really allow us to feel very safe in the body, grounded, and connected to our own intuition about what's right for us in terms of what we do in the space as well. Yeah. Have you felt any of that in terms of stress, pressure? Like, how does that all play out for you?
Yeah, I think for me personally, the injury component has been, again, that feeling of something that's out of my control. I think as an athlete, it's so difficult because even if you do everything right, you can't necessarily guarantee that your body is going to do what it needs to do out on the field. And so I think for me, it's been dealing physically and mentally with the injury, but also the pressure that then comes when I go back to play. For me, it's been a fear of re-injury. And so it's been about having to have strategies to manage that anxiety around that, and almost retraining my brain that I've done everything I can to put my body in the best position possible. And sometimes that's just the nature of sport. But I think there's an acceptance that needs to come with that, of just sitting in that and knowing that that's okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what I see as well a lot with leaders, high performers, is the mindset of got to keep going, got to keep powering through, got to keep pushing. And actually the body sometimes is just screaming at us, both emotionally and physically, to slow down and connect and to process what it needs to, and to have that time to repair and recover and re-energize. And obviously that's what breath can do.
Yeah, I think that definitely resonates with me. I think if I reflect on myself as a younger athlete, when I entered a high performance environment, I thought it was about always doing everything, getting all the extras done, always working harder, being in the gym for really long hours. And I think there is an element of being the best athlete that you need to have that side of the hard work and pushing yourself. But it meant that I didn't allow myself those periods of rest, and I wasn't kind to my body in letting it rest and that contraction that you're talking about. And I think as I've become an older athlete, in a sense, a more experienced athlete, I've learnt that it's okay to not fit in this very small box of what I think an elite athlete should look like. And I think it's actually allowed me to understand what my body responds well to, rather than what I think the elite athlete's body should respond well to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. And has your breath practice, how has that connected with you or helped you in terms of connecting back to yourself and that intuition and knowing yourself?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, I think, from a mental health perspective and then the physical perspective, because I think I'm so busy all the time. I'm someone who's probably in the past managed anxiety by keeping myself busy. And I think the breathwork is something that actually forces me to stop and sit with where I'm at in that moment and accept where I'm at in that moment, rather than trying to cover it up with all of these things. If I have this underlying anxiety, it actually means that I sit with it in the moment, but feel like I actually have a strategy that can help it.
Yeah.
Rather than just pushing it further away.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like the breath is yours. Your breath is a part of you. And this is why I just love it so much, because it's so empowering. It's like, it's mine. I can change this. I can slow down. I can connect to my breath. I can be mindful. So it's such a empowering tool to know you don't need to take medicine. You don't need to do anything really other than just, how do I want to feel in this moment, and what's the technique that I do, or how do I even just slow it down? And yeah, you can have so many benefits just from that.
I think we're about to go and practice some of these. I think you're going to teach me a few
Let's do
things.
it.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Great.